heavy, heavy work. Everybody was looking up and saying, going out in the street. I said, why? Because I'm living in South, I don't know what this is. He said, shells are coming up. Every moment there can be shells, so we had to go up, looking at up, and then when they're still coming, the sound move, they now run out and going to bunker. I just was there last week. I saw the bunker at Sumathy's house. There was a bunker. I was looking for that bunker. I was longing that bunker. So that was the situation where these people left to India from 1983 on. So in 2010, I went to Chennai, and with a friend of mine, I traveled a few camps in nearby Chennai. We have traveled about 50 to 100 kilometers from Chennai to visit these various camps. So what I found in those camps, some of those camps are, at that time, I don't know how it is now, are governed or managed by the political parties, such as this camp is belongs to EPRF. This camp is run by some other party. So there were party affiliated camps. Secondly, the houses that we have seen in this video was much better than the houses of attached saw. Most of the houses are like wooden. Those were wooden, same size, but the wooden houses. Now, some of those camps, now first thing I was told by my friend who works with the JRS at that time, he said, Lakshan, you have to be careful. If you are being apprehended by Q branch, you will be definitely end up in jail. So the main factor in the South Indian refugee camps are the Q branch. Q branch is virtually the governing body of the refugee camp. They are according to them, they are very brutal. If you get caught, you will be end up in definite jail for some time, for indefinite. And the Tamil Nadu jails are, in my opinion, little worse than Sri Lanka. So I was bit scared, but I moved from one place to another place and meeting people, talk to people, so on. And I met two types of people when I talk to the people inside the camps. One, little bit of elderly people, those who want to go back to Sri Lanka. They still feel that Sri Lanka is their home. They want to go back. They felt that the war, displaced us. So we don't want to stay in India. We don't experience the same, the belongingness in India. But there was a younger generation who are 20s, 25, 30s, 35. They felt India is my country. I lived in India since 1983. I'm so much used to this environment, and I'm happy to live here. But only, as RADHAKRISHNAN pointed out, some of the issues, they were not taken as a first-class citizen. That was their main issue. And initially, they were given two kilos of rice, I think weekly basis or something, per person. And they were not supposed to work officially. They were not supposed to work. But they used to go out. They can't live in the camp. And with the permission of the Q branch office within that camp, they move out of the city and do their work and come back. That's how they survive. Now, thirdly, I have seen, I met Mr. Chandrahasan, I met Offer Office, and I met JRS, I met ADRA, I met UNHCR, I met very many other organizations working in Tamil Nadu. So, in today's refugee regime, there's one slogan, nothing about us without us. Nothing about us without us. That's the sort of slogan now is building up in the refugee communities in the world. But in this community, I felt they were like nobodies. The organizations, politicians, who they talk on their political or their institutional or their welfare agenda, not about the agenda of the people. So, I mean, even this present government, once initiated when they were in the power for a short period with the coalition government. They facilitated citizenship for stateless people back in 1987 or 2007 or 2008, if I'm not mistaken. So there were a lot of people who were born in India who were stateless, so their citizenship was in question. So they were this particular government facilitated with the president and arranged the citizenship for these people, some of these people. So they became citizens of Sri Lanka. But what I found is they have no proper, forum to raise their issues, leadership issues. They are part of the various welfare and various other programs of this government, Tamil Nadu government, the various NGOs, various church groups, but they have no proper forum by themselves to raise up their issues. And among the Sri Lankan politique in Sri Lanka, they were not part of the discourse. They were neglected. They were not known. And they were unheard. They were faceless. So refugees are in general, they are faceless. They don't have any face. I'm working for refugees for the last 25 years. I know I've seen all kind of refugees, Sri Lankan, Pakistani, Sri Lanka, and various other parts of the world. So I know how they grow up. What is their status? Their faces. Thirdly, now these type of refugees are not general refugees that we meet in the other part of the world. They are not neither urban refugees nor the refugees who are like certain countries. If you say the refugees from Afghanistan in Pakistan, they have a different, they were there. All they were killed because of various influxes. But they maintain certain, status. But here, both Sri Lankan refugees in Tamil Nadu and Tibetan refugees in Dharmashala and Karnataka are very special political refugees. They were political refugees. The whole issue of which they talk about, the whole issue of citizenship and the voting rights. It's a football for many decades in India. It's a football kicked by everybody. But nothing has happened. I think Chanakya always do something to work out. My suggestion is give them citizenship for them in India and those who are allowed to come back to Sri Lanka. And now Sanjita is here. So UNHCR, so thereafter I visited Salli in Tricomali and various other part of the east and north to talk about the refugee situation. So they said, okay, UNHCR provided 7,500 rupees per person. I'm talking about 2010, 11, 12. And thereafter they will look at us. And they said, the divisional secretary allowed us to build some small houses, gave me a plot of land, but I think thereafter, so we went to the same fate like other internally displaced people. And most of them whom I met in these camps, they were really still worried about the plot of land that they left in Mana, Vani, and various other parts of the country. They're still dreaming about their plots of land. They want to come back. Some of those and not those who are born in India, but those who left Sri Lanka as young people, they are still concerned about their property. They are still dreaming about their property compact and do something. So these dreams were shattered, these dreams were not made in the Sri Lankan political discourse, even the Indian refugee discourse. And every election, as RADHAKRISHNAN, every election in Tamil Nadu, these people become a kind of a political discourse, but nothing happened. And so I think they were faceless, and also they became a political football for many years. And I don't think none of the Sri Lankan governments, forget about the political part, the Sri Lankan government was keen about them and to do some justice for them. And so I still feel I met some people in Mana, whom I know very well, who came from India. They found that there's no future for young people also sometimes. They found that they don't have future in India. They came back, did some studies, became a graduate, and do some different things in the government. For some people, still they feel if I don't get the first class citizenship, if I don't get acceptance, then why should I stay in India? I can come here and do something with my Sri Lanka is my country. So this needs to be addressed with proper, research and proper fact finding, and also keep it open. I think we can't bring the people, young people who feel that India is my country back to Sri Lanka. They will not. They will the fish out of it. But there can be some people who really want to come back. They must be facilitated to come back to Sri Lanka. So with that note, I will end. There's been question you can go.
Yeah, Ruki.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for making this film. I haven't had much interactions with those who have gone from Sri Lanka to India, but I remember a couple of times I did visit some camps and I met some people, and even people outside camps I have met. But I want to highlight that in the recent past, I think there was a series of articles in the Sunday Observer, the state newspaper, by a very young, energetic Sri Lankan journalist, Shabir Mohammed, who went personally, without actually any much institutional support, and did a series of articles. I think if anyone who wants to know more in addition to the film, I think it's worth reading those things. My memories were also brought back when I was reading Shabir's articles. So I want to, in general, acknowledge what Lakshan said directly, and maybe what the film is saying indirectly about choice. So those who want to stay in India, who feel very much Indian, particularly those who are born in India or who live most of their lives in India, should have that choice. And if there are people who want to return to Sri Lanka, even after 4 decades, they should have that choice as well. I think the choice is an easy word to say, but I think it needs to be strengthened by strong political actions. So I think there is a lot of things said that this issue is politicized, but I think that is unavoidable. Because I think solutions are inherently political. It will have to be decisions ultimately by politicians. It could be influenced by people like us, by films, by various other parties, but ultimate solutions will have to come from political leaders of different parties, of in this case, two different countries. If we take the question of people who return from India to Sri Lanka, life is not easy, and I met many of them over the last 2 decades or so. Because there are various challenges that they face that makes it very difficult for them to come and live as ordinary Sri Lankans. So it's not enough to say that, okay, they are free to come if they want. That is simply not enough. So it needs to be it needs to be accompanied such statements by very concrete political, legal, policy, practical measures, and we haven't seen much of that happening in the last few decades. And I think many people who have come from India after several decades who are still living in Sri Lanka, particularly in the north and east, particularly in the northern provinces, I met many of them, feel that they really struggle to integrate. And that, I think I've also experienced not only in India. The last couple of months, I've been talking with a couple of activists who had to flee Sri Lanka to save their lives and went to Nepal. And they've been living there for more than a decade. So, and I remember that during the time of the RADHAKRISHNan government in 2015 and 16, around that time, some of them wanted to come back. So we tried to, I personally tried to speak to the foreign minister at that time, spoke to the Nepali ambassador here and all that. It was not very easy to get them come. But there were, rhetorically, the government in power at that time said that everyone who had to flee because of persecution by the previous government is welcome to come back. But no specific measures were taken to support them to come back. Same here. We have a new government who have said that everyone is free to come back, who has gone because of repression by previous governments, that they are free to come back. But when we try to approach them to concretely help 2 individuals in this particular case to come back, there was no help forthcoming. But it took quite a lot of time. But finally, I think the Sri Lankan High Commission, sorry, Sri Lankan ambassador in Kathmandu came forward to help these people. So I think that was a turning point, and because of the help of the Sri Lankan ambassador in Kathmandu, they were able to come, two of them were able to come back. So I think concrete, specific measures are needed, either way. Even if they are to return or to stay there. Now, if they are to stay there, it's a bit more complicated, I understand, but I think there are different shades of solutions, but like what RADHAKRISHNAN said. Citizenship can certainly be one option. Citizenship is not a magical thing. Countries all over the world grant citizenship to people who come from other places. It's not a magic thing, and it's not an extraordinary thing. We in Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan governments have granted citizenship to a large number of people who have come from India. So it's not a new thing. So it's a process where that's needed to consider what's their choice, but if the choice is to stay, then what can be done. But I also want to acknowledge, I think to a certain extent, I think we saw on the film, people said that when they left from a state of terrible situation, when their lives were threatened, when bombs were falling and all that. So that's how refugees flee from a terrible situation. And I think the first experience that we saw from the film was relatively positive. They talked how the upma they got was like a blessing for them. They used words like love and affection. That's what they felt. And I think people who came to Sri Lanka as well, including Rohingya refugees who came by boat, who were compelled to come here and their boat was in danger, also felt like that at the beginning. So they felt the Sri Lankan Navy saved them, that the Sri Lankan government welcomed them, when other countries in the region, in the Asian region, are pushing them back to sea to death. So that was the initial reaction. But since then, life has not been so nice. So about 116 of them are detained for more than 1 year in a faraway camp in Muleti, with no access. I myself and several others have personally tried to go. We have written to the government and asked permission to visit them, but we have not got permission, and neither were we allowed to go. So that initial action of welcoming them, feeding them with love and affection and with the biscuits or tomato or anything, gradually fades away to be a more inhuman and bordering, I would say, on illegal detention. That's also the case with about another 116 refugees, Rohingya refugees who are now living in Parliament. Most recently, I had to get several requests from them in order for them to register their marriages. When they get marriage, they are not able to register. So there is constantly there are requests about food. So they are literally starving. The people who have come from Pakistan, from the Rohingya refugees, are literally starving in Sri Lanka. They are struggling to be educated because there is no facilities for them to enter into state schools. So they are not allowed to work legally, and if they work legally, they are detained. And then if they try to work in a formal, proper manner, they are not allowed to do it legally, and they can end up being detained. So there are the initial reaction of the positivity of the welcome quickly fades away. I think whether it's in India or whether it's in Sri Lanka. So while we acknowledge some of the positive measures that have been taken, in particular by the Tamil Nadu government, I think it's always a challenge to look into the long term. And I think the question of statelessness is, I think, is what we are looking at here, in the long term. So whether people will be de facto or de jure stateless. So in the case of the Rohingya refugees, it's very clear that they are stateless. But de facto, many other people can become stateless, like the Sri Lankan brothers and sisters who are in India for a long time. And I think the right to seek asylum is a universally recognized human right. So it's the Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights very clearly says that everyone has a right to seek asylum. Now I think it's strengthened by Article 15, of the UDHR, which also says that everyone has a right to nationality. So in effect, what the Sri Lankan government is doing in relation to some of the refugees here, for example, refugees who've been here for like 14 years without having any other prospects of getting citizenship in any other place, the Sri Lankan government is condemning them to a state of statelessness. So it's violating the right to nationality, and I think that's what also the Indian government is doing. So I think it's important for us to recognize some of the positive measures taken in the short term, in the immediate phase, but also look at the many challenges that are ahead of us in the medium term and in the long term, in terms of having certainty and in terms of having hope for the rest of their lives. So thank you again for making the film and having this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Sumathy. Lakshan and Ruki have kind of laid out the status of and the scale of the problem in South India, Chennai and Tamil Nadu, vis-a-vis the film. So I thought I would just say a few things that have kind of come to mind about the film. A very quite searing, yeah, and those faces are going to be with us for some time. They're very understated. Their responses I thought were quite understated, and I actually, as a filmmaker, I was kind of looking at it from a method point of view, because I can't do just, I mean, I don't want to talk about the situation because they've kind of done it quite well. When you go and ask people who want to become Indian, I mean, in the Indian state, in the Tamil Nadu state, and you are part of that polity, for better or for worse, whether you like it or not, that's your reality. You're not going to say, I want to go back to Sri Lanka. I'm thinking of what may not have been said. I mean, and there's nothing to say that that's what they should say. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I mean, so I was wondering whether what was the process? I mean, these are things. I think the film should have been longer. I think there's a much longer film here. But maybe there were other considerations. You are a journalist and...
No, this was meant for politicians.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Nobody has the time. If I have it for 1 hour, Sarkin won't come.
But maybe we are more important than he. I don't know.
They make the decisions.
Make a sequel.
So, what was the process of becoming a citizen apart from your asking? What were the political or social mobilizations that was there a campaign? Were they turned away? I mean, they talk of being turned away or not. But what were the other processes where they kind of thought, okay, I could be an Indian citizen? That kind of couldn't have just come with okay, I'm born in India, so I can be. No, I mean, there must have been a politicization, some kind of a mobilization around it. So those are the things that I thought, I mean, this film kind of leaves out, but I think it's there. I mean, that's why I like it quite a bit. These questions of what you have to say and what you don't want to say. And again, this kind of thing, I mean, I've talked to Muslim refugees, IDPs, and we all know that, right? When there's the evicted instance from the north, and then that's what they say. We were welcomed by it, and they keep on saying that quite a bit, and it's true, they were welcomed by the force, and then they soured. But it's also need to say that also, so that you don't alienate the people who are around you, the powers that be also. So I mean, I'm kind of very curious about all of that. So another thing that struck me, I'm talking about the film, even those who said that they were from the upcountry, the Malayan community, the parents were from the Malayan community. They didn't have any strong, what we understand is, and I may be wrong here, please correct me, they didn't have strong Indian Tamil Nadu accents.
No, this is complete Malay accent. This is Spanish Tamil accent.
Not even a plantation Tamil accent. I mean,
but they might have living in Vanni for a longer period.
yeah, true. But what I was told in the process of acclimatization, over there, there was a strong, I do not know, not even in the little children, but I don't know whether it's a formal Tamil that they kind of, use differently or whatever it is, I mean, so there are all these different registers. I was struck by that, what is the need to, if it's a need, or if it's, how do accents play out here in the sense of your identity and what you want to become. And so these are the, I was also reminded of Maunaguru Siddharthan's, some of us have read that book, many of you have read that book, right? Maunaguru Siddharthan's book, anthropological work, Marrying for a Future, Ananda. Yeah, it's about people, Sri Lankan Tamil refugees living in India, and how they form a community, but also about how these marriages take place. I mean, diaspora marriages take place, and how these people get kind of mobilized around it. But kind of fascinating. So I was just thinking of, where is their life and the political question. I know a family very close to me actually, distantly related. They have been living, they went as refugees. They've been living in, but they're middle class, they've been living not as refugees. They have been living as Indians. I don't know how that happened. And they haven't told their neighbors or anybody that they are from Sri Lanka. So,
It sounds like a movie, tourist family.
is there a movie like that?
Yeah.
And so I was told, my brother-in-law, I mean, that when people from Sri Lanka go, they are whisked off to the attic, the upper story or something. And then they all have their kind of conversations there, not outside, not at the doorstep, not by the gate, because they have never let on that they are from Sri Lanka. So I mean, that's kind of a funny, sad story, but funny story also. So I mean, I think the audience, will have a lot of questions. Yeah, okay.
So I just answer the process part of it because thankfully you didn't tell anything about the technical aspects. It's still being worked on. The color correction is really way off.
It's not my concern.
Thank you. There's still some technical work on it. But yeah, the process, I took about a year to finalize the people who actually finally made it to the documentary finally. We sent out a questionnaire kind of thing, asking for details as to on various aspects, like there's some 20 questions to that, and it was voluntary, administered by the NGOs themselves, what Sir mentioned, JRS, etc. And then we took a look at it to figure out. Of course, the young boy, the 14-year-old boy, selected himself because I had seen his picture in a magazine, and I selected that as my picture for my PhD thesis. That was the front cover of my PhD thesis. So he pretty much selected on his own. And the PhD scholar, because he's the only one PhD scholar, he also selected on his own. And then we had very deep conversations with all of them, like about 30-35 of the people, so contenders, so to speak. Then we finalized on these 6 people, and one criterion obviously was the age group. We wanted somebody in school, somebody who completed college, the third person who's a housewife, and then people at different stages of their career. So that was the attempt, so that we figure out across age groups do the same opinions last, and if they last how important it is to them, what are the different things they're saying. In fact, most of the questions were open-ended. We have shot about some 25 hours of footage in all, and we brought them all to Chennai so that they have an interaction among themselves as well, apart from the fact that they speak to us. So they are also comfortable with what they are saying. The other thing is that every single thing that they said was played back to them. to ask if they are comfortable with, are you okay with what you've said? So that was also another process, and I take all liability for the movie as well. It was first screen to all of them, and they were comfortable with it, and that's why we are seeing it here. So I went there, and then if there are any questions in the audience, yes.
Thank you, Rana. Good evening. I'm Kiran. I'm an Indian, staying here for the last 29 years on resident visa, of course. I love Sri Lanka. I love Tamil Nadu. And congratulations, Rana, on this beautifully documented movie where it's so meaningful, not religious, not political, and it touches the heart. I'm looking not even in the box, not even outside the box, without a box. The Citizenship Act of India 2019 talks of maybe faceless people. It doesn't, and these people, just correct me, they are not illegal immigrants, correct?
No, that's not, they are the legal immigrants.
No.
That's not that.
Because they have come there and documented and their photographs are taken, so, and school certificates, Aadhaar card, graduation certificate, birth certificate, so they are not illegal immigrants. Lawyer, am I correct? If they are not, Citizenship Act of 2019 allows them to become Indian citizens. I don't know, it says, if you read it. Second is, if someone wants to come back, apply an OCI, because you are Sri Lankan citizen, you have a Indian background. The parents, grandparents are from there. So many people in Sri Lanka have got that OCI. Just looking outside. Then those who are born there, how do you say that they are not Indian citizenship? Indian citizens, they are born there, they got Aadhaar card, probably voting rights also. If the double engine government comes, they say double engine is when you have the center and the state, same government. You see what's happening in the border areas. Bangladesh is in the border areas have become citizenship.
You want a BJP government in that center?
No, I'm just saying. You can't get a ADMK or a DMK in center, so you do the other way around. So,
No.
so what I'm trying to say is that there are probably many methods these people can come back and do. And if 60% people are from Indian origin, they come back, get the OCI, go and settle down. One good thing is everyone has praised Indian government, they don't want to come back. As per this, nobody wants to come back. So that's a good thing. So 89,000 or 90,000 people are very happy to be there in India. And thanks to guys like you who are taking it forward. And I'm sure that this will definitely have traction and catch up. Because I personally feel that the way you approached it and gone all around India, and even the way the MPs are talking, I think it is just a matter of time. From 150 crores, 90,000 people don't matter. But when you want to give them the citizenship, it doesn't matter, you can. So kudos to you and all the best.
Thank you.
Everybody wants to. Yeah. Any questions?
Can we give the mic and just,
Yeah, next up. Ravi, and my turn.
thank you. I'm RADHAKRISHNAN from the Royal Society Trust. I was listening to this and I couldn't help but think in my mind about this Srinivas Shastri Pact and the first wave of, our disenfranchisement of citizens, and then the particularly heartless way of deciding who goes and who stays and what happens to the natural the birth rate, so it took so long to resolve that. And then I also had to think about what's happening in India, in Assam, and places like that, where people were born in there as Indian citizens and now are to prove are you Bangladeshi or not. Citizenship is extremely volatile and it's not fixed. Sometimes it works for the betterment of people, and sometimes people go back and say, oh really, you're not a real citizen, you have been here for 2,000 years or something. So it's great that you're capturing it at this time, but to me this debate is never really settled, and it's very important that people fight for these rights, and citizenship on the grounds of humanity. Now you can look at what's happening in the US, where it was accepted that the worker in the country would give you citizenship, and now people are questioning that. So I think it's very important to keep this citizenship in the debate of human rights, which I think has been done by the Indian government. I found that we interviewed some people in Ghana who come back because the older generation were, praying for their land and whatever, and then they came back right in the middle of COVID. So they were truly abandoned by the state. They couldn't do anything here. The government also couldn't do much for them. And then they were talking about we should have stayed. We were better looked after there. So we had those tensions as well. So anyway, I was curious, and it's a wonderful film to capture this, but there are no fairy tale happy endings from these processes. Because somewhere down the line, someone might turn around and say, you came into jobs from us, so that's something we have to think about.
Krishna.
Just a quick question, I think speaking to also what Sakuntala was just talking about, any of your protagonists, have they attempted to return at any point? Because there's also been sort of series of back and forth, which will also then inform their decision as to where to stay, and also a feeling of kind of being stuck between two countries. I know the young kid probably didn't have such an opportunity to return, but was there kind of any distinction between people who had tried to return, tried to set up, and then kind of preferred to go back?
Yeah. This Maridasan Master, he is a footballer who I think played for Sri Lanka. Definitely a good footballer. Was playing football here, and then he went to India on his own once because he was sought after here. They thought that he was working with the LGBT, and then he was sought after. So he ran away to India. He came back twice. In fact, he came back once, and then was with his family. Again, there was some trouble. He went a second time, and he went a third time. It was the third time that he was saying in Kote Matikundana India to COLOMBO. That is, when he came after 1991, after the Rajiv assassination, when everybody was literally being traveled, now. When he came back here, he decided he never go to India because the experience that he had in India. But again, the war starts and he is forced to go back. At that point, he decides that he will take his entire family and never come back to Sri Lanka. He goes there and he sets up a school in Mandapam, where, in fact, one of the other protagonists, Vijitharan, who is now a PhD scholar, is literally completed it, but then Indian universities being Indian universities, it will take forever for him to actually defend the thesis. So he actually studied in that school. So the moment Vijitharan saw the name of Maridasan Master, he said, "Sir, he has taught me in Mandapam school." Then I asked him, "Did you do this?" He said, "Yeah, I was the only teacher there, and there were some 600 students in Mandapam." So he went thrice. The third time he decided he's not never coming back to Sri Lanka ever. The Vijay Balan also, the other person who's of Indian origin, yes, he left plantation India, went to probably one year, but he doesn't want to talk about it. And both of them don't want to talk about their involvement with the movement at all. But the way they say, Iyakam, they don't use the word LTT, tigers or anything. In fact, most of the Sri Lankan Tamils in the camps will use only Iyakam and not
that's common.
that's tigers. So from that, there is affection regarding the fact that a lot of us have written about an organization which is as its nature as the LTT and all of that. But when you look at it from their point of view, that was the only organization which was at that point, there for them. And some of them left because they didn't want their own kids to be drawn into the movement. So that paradox also is there. While they were okay being part of the movement, they didn't want their children to be trapped in it. That was the reason that some of them said, which were not part of the movie at all, that they left to go to Tamil Nadu. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari, for the film. Just a short comment about the economic struggle that's part of being a refugee or a returnee, right? So one thing we picked up, I'm sure you and some others here who are more familiar with the camps in Tamil Nadu, we know better, is the tension between the so-called refugee community and the other communities, with other host communities seeing them as people who get all these free state subsidies and benefits and entitlements, and the war was over so long ago, why do they still get all this free? That kind of local antagonism which we have to cope with on that side. And if they choose to return, and from what we pick up from those who return, it's a struggle to make it here, right? It's not like your land is readily available, like Lakshan said. Your land would be with the military or with archaeology or with forest, or your home would have been destroyed or now in again a militarized zone. And the everyday fight for a job, where do you go and suddenly fight for a job? And this is true of refugees living in Tamil Nadu too, because we came to know of this young gentleman called Samson Darwin, who in early 2021, January 2021, returns as a body back to Tamil Nadu. He was a daily wage worker on an Indian fishing trawler. Now, who is Samson Darwin? He was a refugee who left Sri Lanka in 1990, goes to Mandapam, gets employed as a daily wage fisherman, and gets shot in the Cox Strait. So, I mean, this economic distress chasing them wherever they go is again something that also has to be, I suppose, addressed when you're talking of concrete steps, as Ruki said, to try and resettle them here, or for them to continue there. Either way, that's going to be central to their existence.
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that was sort of mentioned briefly in the movie, but also relates a lot to my experience through what that some of my colleagues have been doing with some of the returnees and helping them to navigate access to services in North, is that the challenges of integration are often in the detail of administrative processes, right? And both access and the indignities and the barriers to having a free life. Right? And I wonder about the question of very often you can get an agreement maybe at a high level, but for that to actually take effect, the return to Northern Province, you have to navigate then that the community that is receiving you back and has certain ideas about what your experience was like, what you're bringing back, and as well as the administrative officers, the service providers ought to be helping you to reintegrate, and their ability or lack thereof to help you integrate, and the kinds of supports, whether it's IOM in Sri Lanka or it's often offered through the government in Sri Lanka's service providers. It's not at all a straightforward process. And I was wondering whether there was any discussion of that. Well, they may not have the Sri Lankan side, but on the Indian side of that experience, whether they talked about those sort of micro mechanics of the welfare support, the refugee organization support, and so on, in terms of restricting their ability to have kind of full lives.
Yeah, the main problem obviously is legal. They don't have a passport. Unless you have a passport, most corporates will not take you for a job. To get a job, the first thing they say is, get your passport. Now, if you can't get it, no HR in any corporate wants to take a chance with the refugee. Why get into that trouble? That's the
Everybody has a passport there.
No, you join a corporate. I mean, because a lot of these kids are in IT. I mean, like they study computer science, or you study regardless of what you study. You can do mechanical engineering.
And you need a passport.
Oh yeah. Once you complete even civil engineering, then finally you end up in an IT firm in India. I mean, that is till last year. Now, once you get there, the problem is that they'll ask you for a passport. If you're not able to produce a passport, then the immediate thing is that what is the problem? Or if there's a background check. In other settings, there is a background check. The background check, the first thing they'll do is they'll look at your Aadhaar card. It will say CAP. The moment it says CAP, then immediately the thing is that it will not take responsibility. So to get over that, we recently formed what is called a partnership forum with a Chamber of Commerce, the South Indian Chamber of Commerce, with the UNHCR, formed a part of the governing council of the chamber. And state government is completely on board. They want to help in whichever way possible. They are willing to give certificates saying that these are not illegal people, because there is a September 2025 order where government of India has made it very clear that these are not illegal people. But the thing is that it's so much in fits and starts that when you say that they are not illegals, you can as well say, as Kiran was pointing out, the 2019 CAA, why can't it be made effective? Because they made it specific to 3 countries, 3 Islamic countries. So it cannot include them. The other thing that I have tried to tell in Delhi also, that it's a BJP government, Hindutva, pro-Hindu government, all that. I tried to tell them repeatedly that 75% of these people are Hindus. So why are you denying your own vote bank citizenship? So that's about the livelihood is a massive challenge, as the kid was saying, Avinesh was saying that most of his classmates have dropped out because it's pointless. Everybody ends up as a painter. I know, when I was doing my PhD in one of the papers, I spoke to somebody to Korean, and he had completed his MA in Tamil. He's a painter, and that's the only job he can get. And the worst thing is that it's election season now, and the chief minister and the prime minister and every other minister will be traveling. Every time the prime minister comes to Tamil Nadu, the camps are shut. The entire region, for about 3/4 districts, the camps are shut. I mean, you can't vote. You can't vote, and you might have taken a painting contract, or you might have taken a mechanical contract, something. But then you are unable to vote the day before the prime minister comes, the day after the prime minister leaves. It's that, I mean, we keep saying normal life, and all that. Tamil Nadu government has done a lot of things. From 2021 to 2025, they have had a committee, and the committee has gone into a lot of things. They've made recommendations. The recommendations have been acted on. There are houses being built, 10,000 houses are being built for refugees. Lots of work is going on. But these essential oppressive superstructures of government of Tamil Nadu itself is not good. The roll call that Mary Hilda was talking about, that's still there. I don't know. Sir was talking about 2 branch, mannerisms. The reason that we didn't include more of 2 branch mannerisms here is only because our idea is to push towards a solution and not to look at this small issues which are day-to-day problems, and because there is a superstructure like this, it's completely oppressive, and these oppressive structures are manned by these people. That becomes the defining paradigm of the entire show. And to make matters worse, I just telling Ruki, that every time there is a development towards the positive side of things, there is something negative that happens. Just last week there has been a murder in a camp of a young upcoming leader inside the camp, and this is about drug trafficking in the camp itself. So, and 2 years before that, there was a human trafficking issue in a camp in Madurai. Some of the refugees were caught in Mangalore, in the west coast, about 700, 800 kilometers away. So every time there is a positive development, we see this completely negative side of things that is happening. This is the only thing that comes into the news. It's not there's a boy called Mayuran here. He's the first MPhil scholar who passed out of Loyola. He works for Offer now. He's not here, unfortunately. These things don't get into the media at all. The only thing that gets, there's a PhD scholar who is completing his PhD and all that. Against all odds, unthinkable odds. there's achieving so much. The kind of people who do great paintings, artwork, music, all kinds of fantastic things. None of these get huge publicity. Tourist family has created a lot of positivity for the Sri Lankan Tamil. But then I spoke to some refugees, including people who were part of this, and they said it's harmless and useless because it doesn't capture anything about the Sri Lankan experience or the fact that they have to, they fled from here, and it's not an easy journey. Anybody can shoot you at any point of time. Once you land there itself, it's again the next audience starts. And people who went there as economic refugees from 2022, they are still holed up in Mandapam camp. They've not been allowed to go outside at all. So many facets to this, but yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking that there are certain practices and laws that are specific to refugees, that's exclusive. But even within the sort of things, especially its privileging of documents for those who are citizens themselves, right? And how that excludes people and also excludes the refugees. For example, when it comes to education, and which schools some of the refugees in Sri Lanka can be admitted to, right? I don't understand why in our free education system that there are exclusions for refugee kids. But it's also the same things, like get a GS signature or get a letter from the house owner. Because you have to show that you're a resident in that area to be admitted to a school. It affects others as well. For example, migrant workers in Sri Lanka will constantly face the same issue. And then the options for the refugee kids is to be admitted to private schools where you have to then pay fees and study them, which is an added burden right, on the families and so on. So what about those practices that we have, which also is then applicable to citizens of the country, which are anyway exclusionary, and why can't we address some of them? Because that would then not mean sort of access for refugees or in Sri Lanka as well.
So what are they telling you, why are they not getting admitted to the schools?
Yeah.
Okay, so shall I respond to that a bit, and then if you want, you can also do that.
Yeah.
So I think the refugee children are not included in the re-education policy of Sri Lanka. So essentially, the most vulnerable, marginalized communities in Sri Lanka, which is a very small number numerically, is not included. So then we question the whole point of having this policy of free education. If it is not meant for kids like that. Just today also I got a message from one of the children who is having a problem about sitting the O-level examination, and now she is asking whether she cannot sit for the O-level examination, which is the stepping stone for further education and career, whether she can do an online job. So, because she's not even allowed to do a job here anyway, given the circumstances. So I think that's a big challenge, but I think there are of course some positive initiatives occasionally, where some private educational institutes have come forward to accommodate some refugee children. But I think those exceptions are not a substitute in any way to can I finish because it's a bit troubling when you discuss. So I think the exceptions, our goodwill of certain individuals or private institutions is not a substitute for solid, consistent state policy. So that's what I think we should always look at. So now listening to this and also about the fact about the economy, I think is a major factor. Because I think we need food, so we need medication in our daily lives, and children in particular, and even young people need some degree of culture. So that's also part of growing up and living with dignity. So without the economic foundation, I think it's very impossible to live a life of dignity. So here I even wonder now, both the Tamil Nadu government has taken at least certain measures. So I'm wondering, whether, as far as I know, any Sri Lankan local council or provincial councils, when they were in existence, has even thought of taking such measures. So I remember back in 2019, after the Easter Sunday attacks, when particularly Pakistani Afghan refugees in Sri Lanka were persecuted, I tried to take some of them to Jaffna, and then some of the individuals were willing to welcome them. But political support from the TNA at that time was very mixed and almost opposite. Some TNA MPs were very welcoming and very supportive, to the extent that one of those MPs were even hosting a refugee family in one of his own houses, private houses in Colombo. But in other TNA MPs were very vocally opposed to having these Pakistani Afghan refugees in Jaffna even for a short period. So within the same political formation. So I think the local government body is also an option that we can look at, particularly when it comes to economic aspects, education, and health and things like that. So I think which we haven't maybe adequately looked at. Like for example, can the Colombo Municipal Council engage in some measures like the Tamil Nadu government has done for those who are within the city limits of Colombo? Can the other municipal council, whether it's in Jaffna or wherever it is, consider similar measures? While we await for the larger political questions of citizenship to be considered. So one more thing that was striking when you spoke, you said you have been resident here for 29 years. So I come across other people of foreign nationality who've been in residence for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years here. They find it fairly, somehow manage to get visa, easy or difficult. So somehow I think our government's priority seems to be, that if you are doing business, then you become eligible for a long-term visa, resident visa, which comes with certain facilities, not citizenship, but and then certain others can get this permanent residency, right? But when it comes to refugees, one of these appear to be options, whether in Sri Lanka or whether in India. So I think it's whenever there's a crisis in Sri Lanka, whether it was in 2022 or even now, the Sri Lankan government in power, including the president, was very quick to say that there will be visa extensions for foreign tourists. But when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers, there's hardly any consideration. And I think the true test of our hospitality, of our religiosity, or is how we treat most vulnerable, marginalized people like refugees. Not how we treat cricketers or tourists, high-spending tourists and entrepreneurs and business people. So I think that's also a challenge for us to think why we treat different people in different ways in terms of options like resident visas, permanent residency.
One more, just a question. The refugees you are talking of, Sri Lankan refugees have come back or local? Yes, that's why.
The last group that I was talking about is Rohingya refugees who have come to Sri Lanka, Pakistanis, Afghans who have come to Sri Lanka. Just like Sri Lankans have gone to India and multiple other countries seeking refugee and asylum status. But earlier on, I was also talking about challenges faced by Sri Lankans who have gone to India and have come back. And I think others also mentioned some.
I want to add some that question. I think don't mix up with the, I'm not saying that in a bad way, mix up with the Indian refugees and those who are in Sri Lanka. It's two different distinct communities. Purely because the community in India, they are political. They are political. Yeah, it's my opinion. They are very political for the Sri Lankan government as well as for the Indian government. Their sustenance, their existence is politically decided. I don't know if the other visuals agree. Because their presence in South India is a political issue. And therefore they provide, same with Tibetan refugees in Dharmshala and Karnataka. It's two different, in India, there are so many other refugees. There are Afghanistan refugees, no treatment at all. There are Rohingyas, no treatment. There are Chinese, no treatment. There are urban refugees in the heart of now New Delhi. So many. They don't bother, the government is not bothered about it. But these two communities, politically, geopolitically important two communities, Dharmashala is Tibetan connected with China. Sri Lanka is connected with Sri Lanka. So this is where the difference. And any other government in South Asia don't bother about the refugees. They don't provide. I mean, if you have gone to Pakistan, you should have seen they are living in garbage dumps. Afghan children are living in garbage dumps as a refugee. They don't provide anything. They are nobody's business. They are nobody's business. Same here in Sri Lanka. If you want to talk about the education, yes, CRC is there, Child Rights Convention. We are bound by Child Rights Convention. There are countries like Hong Kong, which I used to live some time ago. You challenge, based on the CRC, you challenge to the government. Okay, you have obligation to give education budget until the age of 40. So that is one thing. I think we should not mix up these two communities. The refugees here and the Tamil Nadu and Madurai, the Chennai and Madurai refugees are two different communities. Number one. Number two, I think there are some interesting stories sometimes. Some of these refugees, they go to Australia by boats. Because they are living in the coastal area. So, Australia is a failed country, in my opinion, because they fail to adhere to the international standards of human rights, especially the refugee law. So that failed country of Australia send them back to Sri Lanka. These refugees, I have come across one or two situations. The Australian government sent them back to Sri Lanka, send them back to, they are already in Sri Lanka. Though they have gone from Tamil Nadu coasts, they are sent back to Sri Lanka. They have gone out of the country for a persecution, and they were further moved to another country, but they sent back. So this is another situation these refugees are come across, and then I think the issue of them, this issue is need to be discussed more vigorously in the political level. I have heard this discussion in the political level, so this needs to be discussed very seriously.
Brother, just correct me if I'm wrong. For the Indian refugees, the Sri Lankans who have gone there, education was free as long as they wanted, correct?
Yeah.
Unlike here.
Yeah, and certain rations, food.
Yeah, food of course, yeah.
What do you mean unlike here?
I just heard that the refugees were not getting education.
Yeah, government.
None of other South Asian countries giving such.
Yeah, but India was
All
free.
right.
So that's what I said.
Okay.
India, in fact, the Telangana government has been exceptional, even with BRS, not just with the Congress government. They just followed what the BRS did. Rohingya, they've done this fantastic thing of getting the kids into school. Tamil Nadu government, of course, numbers are very small in Tamil Nadu, but then you're talking about 4,500 people in Hyderabad, and it's fabulous. They have let them progress to colleges now. I think 2 Rohingya kids from Hyderabad have made it abroad. They somehow managed to. I mean, see again, you cannot cite precedent because these are all extremely discretionary internal security arrangements. The 2 kids who finished successfully +2 have been allowed to, as in like A-level and O-level. They've been allowed to go abroad.
Rather, correct me once more if I'm wrong. The 5,000 doses of grains and ration that has been provided by the Indian government to Aadhaar card holders would automatically come to these people.
Yeah, any welfare scheme in government of Tamil Nadu is extended to.
So that's excellent.
Yeah, extended to them, including the Chief Minister's health insurance scheme, every one of that. But then there is this question of dignity, which is it's a. I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. It's kind of second nature. We are building it for them, and the refugees are within a earshot. But then our own people don't have it. This kind of things, and what Virat said, the financial issues. Like in a city, there is no issue. In a town, there is no issue. Where a camp is located in a town, there is no issue. When it comes to a village, it's so stark. It's so easy to know what they are getting and what the rest of the village is getting. That really creates a lot of friction between the camp and the villages itself.
Yeah. Mr. RADHAKRISHNAN, thank you very much for bringing this alive. I was also, while watching the documentary, I was also thinking of another category that probably the same faceless people might apply. I'm talking about returnees, Indian returnees coming back to Sri Lanka. There is lip service to say everyone is welcome. As Ruki or Lakshan pointed out, before this red carpet welcome, all of that happens. But when a returnee, a Sri Lankan refugee, chooses to come back as a returnee to Sri Lanka, they are lost completely. There is no program at the moment by the Sri Lankan government to support them. Firstly, any child born in India, 21 plus, has to pay a fee to get their citizenship in this country. I think advocacy has gone on, as far as I know, from 2001 on this issue. All the different governments in power in this country. But still, they have to pay 25,000 plus rupees to get back their citizenship. Mind you, these are people, Sri Lankan people, coming with open arms because 25 years another country has invested in their lives, including graduates and postgraduates willing to come back to work and serve here. We have hundreds of graduates running off soon after degrees from here, migrating and justifying all of that. And here are people who want to come back. And we are not providing an opportunity to facilitate their coming. Every step of the way, there are blocks. The university graduation, as long as they are on the Sri Lanka Grants Commission list, they get in. All other professional qualifications. We lack serious skills. We are looking for skills overseas, but we are not getting any certification becomes a problem. So there are a whole heap of problems that Sri Lankan returnees face. And unfortunately, this state has not addressed it. And while you have done an excellent job promoting citizenship for Sri Lankan refugees there, we also must need to, as Sri Lankans, we need to wake up and create a conducive environment for people those who choose to return. I think I take your point. It's a choice that people have to make. Some those who prefer, they are welcome to stay there, but those who prefer to come here, we have to make an effort to come. I also want to make one last point. When we compare India and us, of course, I take Lakshan's point that it's political. Sri Lankan refugees have been treated very well. Many personal stories I know, they never have entered a university in this country with the kind of proposition that exists here. But they have come back with degrees, and India has done that. And so there is that aspect of it also we have to remain very grateful to India. Thank you.
I think there was a UNHCR sub-branch based in Chennai to facilitate those who want to come back to Sri Lanka together with the sub-office or the consulate office in Chennai, and they arranged the passage. In certain part of the history it was quite, visible and things work very well, but I am not sure anyone is working, or is there any scheme is still exists here in India?
There is still an office. It's a very degraded operation because of the current concerns of the UNHCR budgeting and all of that. Last year, halfway down the year budget year, UNHCR was told that 60% of the budget has been cut. because corporate used to pay up. But it's still an operation. They're still managing because our representatives are here. Our JRS, etc. They really like work on the ground. They have the pulse on every single camp. They have details about who wants to go back and all of that. But again, I'm not sure if they're able to give any more financial support. Now, government of Sri Lanka gives a ticket, bus ticket from Katunayaka to wherever they want to go. That is the extent of
7,500 rupees.
that's the extent of support that the government of Sri Lanka extends. So yes, I agree with you that it's incredibly difficult for anybody to come back because they say that IDPs, the internally displaced people here during the war, they got homes. 44,000 homes in 1 year in Japan and all of that. And another 10,000 being built for the hill Tamils, plantation Tamils in the plantation areas. So right now there's no incentive to come back also. That's also part of the problem we ask.
I think there's no political will, right, on the part of our successive governments and the concerns of the people of in the valley in particular. I don't think they are being resolved, and those are stagnant in a lot of ways, particularly with regard to land. So, for the Sri Lankan government, I don't know whether they are going to invest in this as a goodwill measure, unless like the Sirima Shastri path, they are like, forced to kind of do come to some kind of a state. I don't know. Ruki, I want to ask you, you said something about a person wanting to do an O-level. This is a refugee child or when is Sri Lankan refugee child who has come from India, or so how are they doing? Who are they? That's what.
No, I was referring to not a Sri Lankan refugee returning from India, but another refugee who has come from Pakistan to Sri Lanka.
And they're studying in the school.
They're paying and studying in the private school, but now struggling to do the O-levels because of documentation related issues, and also the discouragement that she faces because she now is talking about doing an online job, giving up the idea of doing O-levels, and that's because of the documentation.
And I do not know, I know there are politicians here, but I don't know whether the Tamil politicians have really kind of taken this up. I don't know. I am.
He's refusing to buy.
But so now the current government, they were in coalition in 2004 to 9. They took up this issue of the people of Tamil Nadu, bring them here, statelessness of them. But I think since they have showed some interest, I think it's good to talk with them whether you want to go back to your old, campaign and do something for these people.
Can you really expect Lakshan, can you really expect that?
I don't know, I'm not at that part.
I mean, this is the first government that has not given access to civil society organizations to visit a refugee camp. Yeah, even you and HCR. That's the reality.
Maybe in response to what Lakshan said, I think what I read publicly of what Mr. Sivamohan said is, I think, a positive statement. So he is on one hand respecting saying that we must respect the rights of wishes of people who want to stay there, but at the same time saying everyone is welcome. So, but what I feel is that those can turn out to be empty rhetoric, unless they are accompanied by very concrete measures. And being in power, they have all the possibilities of negotiating with the Indian government. They also have all possibilities of taking legislative actions, including changing laws and bringing in new laws, which usually requires only a simple majority, but in this case they even have two-thirds majority. And they can also facilitate administrative measures, and they can resolve, I think, very quickly the blocks that the people who have already returned are facing. And I think if the blocks that the people who have already returned from India are facing are resolved, and there's a conducive atmosphere, more people are likely to be encouraged to be coming here. If they feel that their welcome is not only by words, but by actual legislative policy decisions and practical actions, I think we will see more people returning. And I think, I don't know necessarily about the people who have come from India, but I know from my fellow couple of activists who returned back from exile from Nepal are facing surveillance and harassment from intelligence agencies after coming back here. Now that will obviously discourage others from returning. So I think the words alone will not suffice. I think that the words are good, but they must be backed up with real actions, particularly from people who are in power.
Another question to you and maybe to others also, but I also want to know why people here are trying to leave. So why would people want to come back? I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of asking that, you know. I have that question. But, what was that?
Ask the people are leaving.
Sumathy, most people are not going to India or somewhere here.
True.
Everybody wants to go to Europe.
So I also want to know, is there a diaspora, I mean, is there a diaspora kind of action there? And because I know the diaspora is kind of active in other areas, in terms of coming and going and shopping and having marriage. I mean, it's a big hub, particularly for those who cannot come here, asylum seekers who cannot come here. The parents go from here and, so there's a lot of activity. And I mean, you said that these people are going and having degrees, obviously they have to pay for these degrees, right? They have to
No payments, with the government.
for the government, okay, so they go into government schools or universities and things like that. And so, I mean, but there is a certain kind of upward mobility that they see. Is it something that they've taken from here, like they are kind of, already kind of empowered in terms of family background, educated, or or there is also some other kind of activity that's access a buffer, or it's nothing.
Very short, it's a very politically incorrect thing to say, but that diaspora refers to people in Europe and US and Australia and all of that. They are people who actually took a plane ticket to go. These are people who went on a boat for 30,000 rupees.
No, they went in boats also.
To Sri Lankan, Australia, yes. But then they all have become citizens. One way or the other, they become citizens. But there is no path to citizenship here, number one. Number two, it can be somebody vaguely related to the people in India. So from 83 to maybe till around 2000, they were sending some money to them, so they were able to subsist. Now that money also has stopped. The relationship between the diaspora and the people in Tamil Nadu is completely, not completely, but nearly non-existent, so to speak. So there is a huge difference there. Yeah, sorry.
I just want at one point, I mean, I don't see many people refer these people in Tamil Nadu as diaspora. What
I was talking to Western diaspora.
The diaspora, they also diaspora. Diaspora was very critical word from the very old time. But these people are also diaspora. That's number one. Number two, I think Radha, he is not the first government who allowed to visit Rohingyas or the public or the UNHCR allowed. Even the Mahindra Rajapaksa government also allowed. Allowed.
But this one does not.
It's not allowed. I don't say they allowed.
No, this is the first government.
Not allowed. You are being correct.
And I don't know why. Do you know why?
I don't know.
So, diaspora question you to say, but Sanjay.
I tried to stay quiet for almost more than an hour. I to make it keep politics out of it, but I think a few questions were directed towards me, even though I stayed quiet, so I think I must say a few things. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate RK for this excellent documentary, and like somebody said, I think we have made it normal, even though it's not politicians only who see the lights of somebody and promote it even a little more. But I only been member of parliament 2 terms, this is my second term. And I think this was something that I was very passionate about when I got elected. The first time, I think RK actually helped me go and visit the commissioner, IPS officer in charge of the rehabilitation centers, and I think Balani and I visited the commissioner there, and we were trying to do a pilot project because you see there are 90,000 refugees. It's not very easy to do like a say, okay, we want to bring back all the refugees. So we want to do a pilot project of actually identifying these 20 to 25 individuals or families from certain camps who would like to move back. And we also spoke to some friends in the diaspora in different countries, and one of the biggest challenges that we saw was, like most of the speakers mentioned, was how do they come back and restart their lives? They can't just come back, their lands may be with the tree or and the families also, if we were to randomly pick 20 families from 20 different areas, we have to deal with 20 different departments. Let's say, for example, if we, out of the pilot project, we selected 20 families. If we had selected 2 from Mena, 3 from Trinco, 1 from Baneklo, or different parts of Jaffna, then we have to deal with 10 different mission secretariats, 10 different GN Ramanadaris, 10 3-4 different district secretaries. So we thought we'll find some members. And I think at that time, I think this was during the Ranil Wickremesinghe administration, when during COVID people traveled. It was after that we tried this. There was some consensus, and we were also planning a cross-party parliamentary delegation to visit these camps. So that creates more awareness and to learn about it. Unfortunately, none of it actually happened. Various issues, that's why I say I don't want to comment on. I don't want to blame anybody, but unfortunately, we couldn't actually pull it off. So it's not something that we've given up on. But I think the present government also it's something that we hope we raised it with the president when I met the president for discussions. This is one of the key points that we raised, but how to facilitate this. And I think when we went to Tamil Nadu also, I think from our members from our party spoke to the Chief Minister, Honorable Chief Minister also on how to facilitate it. So there are a lot of challenges. Some of the challenges are, one of the challenges that was mentioned was how when they come back, they have accumulated about 300-400 kilos of items. Would be, I mean, for us it may not be of any value to carry those 300-400 items, but that is their entire life's belongings. So how do you facilitate that? So when they come here, so we have to build them a house. So even though the the diaspora organization was ready to build houses for the ones who are coming, once the houses are built, how do we move livelihood? So there are many challenges. So being a member of parliament or a political party cannot resolve this issue. It has to be a government. I mean, I think Ruki mentioned about local governments. I think it goes beyond the local government's capacity to facilitate something of that kind. The provincial council, maybe the provincial council would be something body that we used to try and facilitate something like this. So hopefully, we also engage further with this government. I know it's been so many decades and it's been more like, it would sound like lip service again, but we can only keep trying. And one particular example that I like, right, is one person from one of the camps actually came back to Trinco and contested on our party for the Trinco Municipality Council. He's now a Municipality Council member. He was born there, went to school there, and then he moved back here and is now a local government. So there are success stories of people who come back as well. Obviously, we can't force anybody to come. The ones who wish to come back, I hope we can all. This could be this could be what gives us all a kickstart again on this long-standing issue. So thank you once again, Auntie, and I also thank you for ICS for facilitating this.
Thank you. I think they'll throw us out.
But in South India, there's a big economic development also right now. The job-wise, there are more jobs. So what are you going to bring those people, and if you put into this particular area, the
jobs are there in Madras-like cities only. So if you put them into areas where not in the cities, there won't be jobs. Because in other parts of India, I was saying, people coming to Chennai or southern cities to work. There's a big deficit in the labor. Yeah. So I was thinking they will not coming because economic situation in the country is now South India has a fast economic growth rate than India. Historically, Sri Lanka had a very fast economic growth rate. History agriculture like that. But today it has taken over by India as, especially South India. Labor-wise, job-wise.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Job market is definitely better in India, and the North Indians do completely different jobs from what the Sri Lankan Tamils do there. So there is no competition in that area also. And since it's painting and extremely specialized work, mechanical and all of that the Sri Lankan Tamils do, there is really no problem in competition. But when they see prosperity, that is when the problem comes. When they see prosperity of the Sri Lankan Tamil in a camp, buying an AC for instance, buying a two-wheeler for instance, that's when the jealousy kicks in and that starts a huge spiral in villages, not in towns. Towns, nobody bothers, nobody seems to have the time for that. Having said that, I think we've run over the time, and really thank you to my fellow panelists, Lakshan, and Sumathy for coming, and of course, thank you ICES for this wonderful opportunity. I leave much more humbled and much more a learned man from this interaction. So many questions that I need to ponder about also beyond the documentary itself. So thank you for that opportunity. And Yohani, I don't know whether she's here, but thank you so much for all the help that she also has rendered. And thank you for coming and staying patiently for so long. Of course, we can't do it, pull it off without offer JRS and EDRA. So thank you again to them, especially offer with whom I started understanding the refugees from the Sri Lankan perspective. Thank you so much. Thank you for, of course, Meera.
Thank you.